Good evening, everyone. Today is the Monday, November 17th Planning Board meeting. I'd like to open it up with 71 Hill Street. Mr. Bennett.
Thanks. So I think we should be in good shape here. Since the last meeting, we have engineered the cross-access between what we'll just call the movie theater property and this site. It's been reviewed. So it's not just the concept to do it and an easement. We've actually engineered the cross-access on our site in a way that will hopefully dovetail well into the movie theater site. So and that's been shown on the plan.
Are they answering your phone calls yet?
Who's that?
The movie theater?
No, but that's okay. We were able to figure out from our site what the topography was and engineered in such a way so that it'll be.
When was the last time you tried to contact them?
I've tried to contact them between my client and I. We've tried to contact them since that meeting a couple of.
You've tried in the last 5 or 6 days?
Oh God, yes, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I've been in contact with the agents for the movie theater. We've been exchanging drafts of the cross-access easement between all parties. So I did draft a cross-access proposed one.
Okay.
I emailed it to 1100 Architects, who's the agent. They acknowledged receipt and said that they forwarded it to their client.
Okay. I think you're going to make some progress there because the hammer was put down on them to start cooperating. So I think let us know, right? If you're not getting not getting
I will.
contact there, but I think we broke the log jam there.
But understand, we've done everything that we can do.
Yeah, I understand that.
Including engineering it.
Yep.
And we think it works.
Good. Good.
So that's been reviewed by your staff. We also have a very, very complete cross-access easement, which is hardly, perfunctory. It takes care of all eventualities, possible things. So that was good. So I think you should be very happy with the cross-access where it is and be able to proceed. So not only would you have hopefully a conditional approval based upon final cross-access easements in form satisfactory to your lawyer, and again we've seen them and we're happy with them. We are, but we've actually engineered the cross-access, which was something that hopefully everyone's happy about. We found a place to move those two compact spaces so that they weren't impeding access to the, or there was no even argument that they were impeding access to the dumpster. I know the board wanted to see that. In reviewing the tapes from the last meeting, it's pretty much the understanding that as long as these items were taken care of, if there were any open engineering items, they could, as is very common, be dealt with as part of a condition to a site plan approval. Now remember, and this is very, 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 very important, because I want the board to have an enormous amount of comfort on this issue. A condition to finish up some of these not monumental, but nevertheless outstanding engineering issues, not only is it very typical, but you still retain control, because until we do that to the satisfaction of your engineers, you don't have to sign the map. You don't sign the map, we don't get a building permit. And I was very pointed in saying that last time for reasons which I don't want to go into, necessarily in great depth, but I always try to put myself in the position of a board and the board's counsel. I didn't say until, subject to the building permit. I said not only subject to the building permit, God willing there'll be a conditional approval tonight, not only subject to the building permit, but subject to the signature of the map, which means until you as a board are happy with, and your council is happy with any conditions, there's no vote to direct you to sign the map. And your council would have to be happy, your engineer would have to be happy, and you would have to be happy. So, and the way the code read is you can't get a building permit until the map is signed. Whether or not that has been followed in the past, I don't know. However, we offered that specifically as a condition, again, trying to put myself in the shoes of board members who are trying to be conscientious as well as council. So I think it was fairly clear that if we took care of those big ticket items from the last, at least the way I heard it, we could expect a conditional approval this evening. As you know, there's an industrial development agency. Do I have the entity correct? That we're trying desperately to meet. It's a work session next week, so we'd like to be able to go there with not only the trustees' approval, which we have, the ARB approval, which we have, the zoning board of appeals approval, but your approval. And it took a lot of doing, getting all of this stuff done, so that we could present you with changes to the plan and an engineered cross-access and the easements, et cetera, so that you would be comfortable. But again, remember, your ultimate comfort is until we please you right down to the crossing the I's, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, you don't have to sign the map. No signature of the map, no building permit. So that's your ultimate holdback. So I would respectfully request that you give us conditional approval for this. It's been a long process, a lot of resources, a lot of energy put in this. I think it's going to be fantastic over there. It's going to be really a shot in the arm to the business community.
What exactly would conditional approval look like? Have you discussed that with Mr. Bennett, Kim?
I have not, but it's, conditional approval is a resolution that approves it with conditions, which is very typical in site plan and subdivision approvals. So, and then it delineates when certain items are due. For instance, SWIP, due at a certain time, a speedies permit, a work permit for the road. They're all due at certain times, and it spells out when they have to be in, either before building permit or before signature of plans.
Very typical.
I understand, yeah.
I mean, we've hammered out through a very long process through your board and the other three boards, and you have nothing to fear about being criticized by not being thorough, exceedingly thorough, even with a conditional approval. Because again, and at the risk of being repetitious, I'll just say it for your comfort, you retain the ultimate control. Your signature doesn't go on that map until you're happy with the final form, the engineer's comments, the easements, whatever. But we've worked very, very, very hard. For a while there was concern about engineering the cross-access. We've done that, and we submitted that over a week ago. I left this meeting the last time, take care of these big ticket items, and the rest can be conditions. And I'm not diminishing these engineering comments, and that's what they are, as comments. They're mostly almost all map changes and changes that, in terms of the way things are presented, that the engineer wants to see. We're going to do those. I'm not diminishing those, but you still retain control by reason of holding back on the signature and ultimately building permit. So you're safe.
Understood.
So I would ask you to move forward with that.
Yep. Any questions from the board?
I just have a question on the form of site plan approval. On the whereas clause is the last sentence of clause E. I thought was kind of oddly worded in the sense that this is an approval. What does that mean? Should address.
What number are you on?
Clause E, the last sentence of clause E of the whereas clauses. No, but it says the planning board should address. When would they do that? What does that mean?
I'm sorry, what page are you on?
Page 2, clause E of the whereases, the last sentence.
Where it says the plan provides for an outdoor swimming pool?
No, it says the planning board should address any potential noise impacts by requiring appropriate landscaping and screening. When would that happen? What is that?
I'm sorry, I still can't find,
Sorry,
one of you guys-
it's the end of that
The last
paragraph at
sentence.
E. It's and what I think you're reading is that she's requoted the Board of Trustees decisions, the conditions that the Board of Trustees placed on their decision are now quoted in this draft.
Right.
So,
Trustees.
so that was so the Board of Trustees, that was one of their conditions that you,
So is it okay for the board that I go over this? Can we, or do you want to wait?
In 1 minute.
That way I can address this comment
Yeah.
appropriately.
In just a minute, any other questions, comments from board members? Understand the position that you're in, really do, and we want to help, right? We've got a logistics issue here in that a number of the board members just received this late this afternoon and have not read, I'm told,
Okay, but
the resolution.
let me
Hang on,
address
let me
that,
land,
okay?
okay? I understand that you have a IDA meeting scheduled for this Thursday or next week?
Next week.
Upcoming. And you're unable to make the December meeting for some reason.
There's none. There is none.
Correct.
It's the work session that gets followed by an official meeting.
So
You
you
have to be
can,
ready for the work session, and we've tried to piecemeal it to them, and they don't want to hear anything about that.
and there's, the next work session is not until
January, next
January.
And you know, we really turned ourselves inside out to get this stuff done. The cross-access agreement, easement, the cross-access engineering was at the village over a week ago. Plenty of time to look at that. You know, all of the stuff that is the heart and soul of this site plan has all been worked out. You're looking at what we're proposing. The only thing that we leave open are some of the really like the fine points. Like if you want us to show, as what Mr. Dye just said, if you just want us to show screening around the pool, I'm sure all you have to do is ask us for it. But this is it's frustrating for me as a longtime practitioner because I have walked out of the town of Southampton, which is an extremely difficult and very painstaking process with site plan approvals that say satisfy engineering comments when they haven't even been generated yet. So you're so much further along in this process, You know what this facility is going to look like. You know everything about it. And most of these comments, I think all of these comments are additional information that the engineer wants to see on the plan, but they're not going to change the location, they're not going to change the layout, they're not going to change anything that all of these boards has approved. So it's, if I may, at the, just being direct, we worked really hard and we're entitled to this conditional approval. And that's what was reasonable for us to expect, and you said it the last time.
Yep.
And that is why we put so much effort into getting this stuff done.
Yeah, let me give you a different perspective on that, right? My view is that a application is complete when it has a accurate site plan filed with it. And
That's not what the law says.
yeah, but,
That's not what the law says.
well, then,
That's not what the law says, and that's not what the custom and practice of this board has been. You don't hold up on a site plan until you have every single.
I'm not talking about every single detail.
Well, that's what you're asking.
But I'm talking about there are significant details. Now, in this situation, I think those details have been articulated in the resolution, and I'm comfortable that we have an opportunity to look at those before the site plan is signed and before a building permit
Oh, gosh, yes.
is issued. But I will tell you that there are things on this site plan that I would expect to have been done correctly. We can go through them if you want, but I don't think it's a valuable use of time in the meeting. So coming in here and saying, I demand we approve this right away, does not get a lot of traction with me.
I don't know why it wouldn't,
When-
candidly.
well,
We
it
worked
doesn't.
very hard to get this
Mr.
done.
Bennett, it doesn't, right?
And I've
But
been
we're
doing this
trying-
for,
We're trying to move this along and help you out, because I understand that you're anxious to get going. It's off-season. You want to get as far as you can so you can take advantage of the upcoming summer season if you, so get all that. But we are stuck here a little bit because some of us have not, there are members here that have not read this, and we're asking them to approve it. Is that a fair?
well, adjourn it. Adjourn it until, second call it. You've got other matters on, we'll wait here. Seriously. This is not rocket science.
What do you
I don't know how else to say it.
recommend?
I would say that there is nothing surprising in here
Yeah.
or that shocks the conscience that waiting 2 weeks, it's gonna change. I can go through it. Most of it has to do with the special permit that was issued by the Board of Trustees. A lot of the conditions, and it incorporates all of the conditions that the engineering department has asked for. So I would say that there is nothing in here that you're gonna say, oh, well, I didn't know this is a surprise to me, this is brand new, we have the few meetings that I have been in, these things have been discussed. There's nothing in here that hasn't been discussed or heard by the board,
Does-
or that will change in a few weeks.
Kim, does it make sense to share the most recent site plan that was submitted Tuesday? That, I know that they showed a concept of where the parking was going to go, but that resolved the issue, that shows the cross-access and that shows the how they moved the 2 parking stalls to accommodate the dumpster. Would that be helpful? I don't know that the board, I mean, I know that it's been in the Dropbox and you have hard copies in front of you, but I believe it was just received last Tuesday, so I'm not sure if anyone's looked at it.
If that's helpful, but I want to make sure that everyone here feels that they've had adequate time to consider this before we move forward on a resolution.
Well, let me just go through,
Been in the Dropbox since Tuesday.
let me just go through this, and then if you have questions, you can ask me, okay?
Yep.
All right, so let's just look at it real quick with the proposed resolution, all right? The first page where it says, whereas the Board of Trustees approved a special permit. This is the special permit for mixed use, which included the resort, hotel use, and workforce housing that was approved in this past February. And underneath that, you'll see A, B, C, and you flip over the page. Those were all conditions of the special permit of the Board of Trustees. I'm just reciting them, so you have them handy. And it tells about all the requirements that the Board of Trustees put on this approval for the special permit. So A, B, C, so Lisa did tell me that I did a cut and paste of the special permit approval, but 2 additional letters were put in there. So, but the substance is still the same. So when you go to page 3, now we continue. We're done with the special permit that the trustees issued. The next whereas
Can I
condition.
just say a question? I mean,
Go ahead.
the lettering seems off, so is that,
Well, the lettering is correct up until I, and then J should not be there. So J should not be there and L should not be there, just the letters, but the substance of it is the same. So when you go to page 3, you get to whereas by resolution in October, the Board of Trustees determined that the approval of the special permit, and again, we're still Board of Trustees, is considered an unlisted action under SEQA. Next paragraph, after coordinated review, the Board of Trustees still, right, adopted a negative declaration pursuant to seeker. And then the next paragraph has to do with the Zoning Board of Appeals decision that was issued this past July. They adopted a resolution granting the following relief: a special exception use pursuant to section Article 4 for a swimming pool, a variance to permit a first story for proposed building A. C is a variance to permit the principal building span along Viridian Way to be 56% of the frontage, and along Hill Street to be 83%, where 90 is required. And D is a variance from 116.14 subsection 1 and 6 to to permit accessory off-street parking areas to be 7 by 18 for 2 proposed compact parking. So that's their ZBA decision. And then the next paragraph states on July 28th, the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation granted approval for the proposed improvements. And then the next paragraph is to do with the planning board. The planning board has site plan review over jurisdiction over commercial property. Next paragraph, whereas the planning board received a site plan approval for 1.69 acre of property for the demolition of the existing building in the rear of the property, construction of a resort hotel, continued commercial use of building A, fronting on Hill Street, renovation of building F to accommodate 8 workforce apartments, on-site parking, infrastructure, and proposed sewage treatment plant. Next paragraph details the notice of public hearing and the dates those public hearings were heard. And the next paragraph after that says, whereas no written public comments were received on the site plan application, and it was closed on October 6th. Now this is where all the conditions start, the next paragraph. Now, therefore, be it resolved, and then you flip over. Have to list the date of the plans that were submitted as part of the approval. So we cite to Squires, Holden, Weisenbacher, and Smith, all the different sheets, 9 sheets, 10 actually, if you include the amended landscape plan. And here's the conditions, okay? These are the site plan conditions from this board. Any substantive deviations that impact the site layout, design, number, and size of proposed components as compared to the sheets above shall require a modified site plan approval by the planning board. Number 2, proof of compliance with all the conditions A through N of the Board of Trustees special permit. Okay, that's the first page. That's all the conditions from the board. So it says proof of compliance they have to provide. 3, submission of Suffolk County Department of Health Services approval for construction of the sewage treatment plant prior to issuance of a building permit. 4, subject to referral to the Village of Southampton Fire Marshal. Any comments raised by the fire marshal shall be incorporated into the approved plans prior to signature of final plans by the chairman. If the fire marshal referral comments require items not contained in this approval, the applicant shall be referred back to the planning board for further review. 5, a permit from the Department of Public Works for all proposed work in the village right-of-way, including a performance bond if required by the superintendent of public works prior to signature of the final plans by the chairman. 6, this is the engineering comments from H2M. So I just copied and pasted from their memo what they wanted to see. There's, I believe 17, it's A through Q. Cross-access easement, which I did draft a cross-access easement. I submitted it to Mr. Bennett's office for his comments. They did give me comments, and I submitted it to the, what's the address of the movie theater? 31 Hill Street?
43.
I'm sorry?
43.
4-3. So I submitted to the agents for 4-3. They acknowledged they received it, and they're reviewing it. B, a stop, and this again, this is engineering comments still. Provide a stop sign at the cross-access driveway for vehicles heading westbound into the site. C, drainage structure schedule comments. D, rim elevation for structure 4D should be higher than 4C given the proposed grading. E, 3 dry wells and drainage area do not meet the minimum 10-foot horizontal spacing, edge to edge. F is add to note 5, contractor to provide appropriate supportive excavation around the site to mitigate off-site impacts to adjoining properties. G, on sheet 5, add a call-out to identify the location of proposed trench drain. H is provide spot elevations on each corner of the pool and pool deck. Now going over to page 5, I, add grade to structure 5B and lower elevation of inlet to create a depression. J, the proposed elevation on the north side of the southern driveway along Viridian Way creates a low point sump which is not acceptable for roadway and must be revised. And to your point, Mr. Chairman, you did raise that at the last meeting. K, the structure schedule should provide pipe invert elevations. L, the handicap ramp details must show the detectable warning surface. M, a silt fence with wire backing must be installed around the perimeter. N, the erosion and sediment control plan must show the location of the construction entrance and inlet protection for all proposed drainage structures. O, provide construction details for erosion and sediment control measures. P, for area 6, there are 2 locations where a drain is proposed and are labeled 6C and 6D. A construction detail must be provided in the plans. And Q, on sheets 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, show the adjoining cross-access driveway in its current configuration, which I thought was already on there, but
It's on there.
double check that. All right, 7. This had to do with Lisa's comments with the lighting plan, and she put those in there. The following comments shall be addressed on the lighting plan and must be addressed prior to signature of final plans by the chairman. Include light fixture cut sheets, including manufacturer, model number, lamp source type, lumen output and wattage. 2, provide mounting details, including pole foundation. 3, provide lighting spillover calculation points. That's photometric, right, Lisa? Is that photometric?
Yeah.
Okay. 4, include statement of lighting control indicating proposed hours light fixture will operate and mechanism of control. So that's to do with lighting. Now, going further on, number 8, a speedies general permit for construction activity, that's for stormwater pollution, including erosion and settlement control plans shall be prepared prior to issuance of the building permit. Number 9, town engineering approval of the stormwater pollution prevention plan, otherwise known as a SWIP, prior to signature of the final plans by the chairman. The vehicular cross-access easement and pedestrian cross-access easement, which I've already discussed. We've already been doing drafts and revisions on that with all the parties involved. The applicant here has to sign the cross-access and provide the recording documents, and we'll hold on to those until we get done with the movie theater, and then when that's done, they can sign them and provide me with the recording documents. Number 11, submission of 5 sets of final plans. 12, and these are typical site plan requirements, and 12 is the landowner shall file a notarized affidavit including compliance with the conditions of site plan approval. The last paragraph is that the approved site plan is valid for a period of 2 days from the date of approval.
Thank you.
I think it's very comprehensive. I don't think you have any worries.
Yep.
I do understand, from speaking with you, Mr. Chairman, what your concerns are about another site that has perhaps done things that they were not supposed to. I don't see that there is any mechanism here for this applicant to do what some other, maybe perhaps bad actors have done in the past.
Understood. Thank you. Lisa, Alex, anything to add? Any concerns or risks that you would like to advise the board on outside of what Kim's already said?
I think that, you know, the conditions which will ensure compliance with having the plans to the standard that is necessary, as well as the SWIP requirement, and Suffolk County Department of Health Services approval of the SDP. These are the things that are going to be protective. They did have to amend the plan a little bit in terms of to allow access to that dumpster, which was done, so that our engineer was much more comfortable with the entrance, the access to that with the revised design that was presented in the most recent plans. So, yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions or show anything you have questions on the site plan, but I don't have any concerns right now.
Okay. Alex? You good?
I just corrected those 2 discrepancies in the numbering from the Board of Trustees special permit, and there was one reference to town approval that I corrected to village approval. I did refer this to the fire marshal to provide some written comments. He is out of the office this week. I had reviewed it with him previously. I think his concerns largely had to do with painting no parking and fire zones along the Radian Way in the village right away. But I think he was generally satisfied about that there was enough space around all sides of the building for the fire apparatus, which is his primary concern. But I've asked him to provide some written comments when he returns.
Okay. So, look, Mr. Bennett, I understand a monumental effort was made by you on behalf of your client today, and Kim and Lisa and
Well, not
Alex.
just today.
I understand, but especially today, earlier today, to get to the point where we are right now. And I think the conditions covered in this resolution, the outstanding conditions issues provide an adequate, my personal belief is they provide an adequate mechanism to, for the planning board or the village to tap the brakes if some of those conditions aren't met, right? So I'm comfortable advancing this, right, if the rest of the board is, right? So, I'd like a show of hands
I have a question.
or questions.
How do we get the paragraph references correct so that the conditions, what is it, number 2, A through N, are actually reflect the paragraphs that express the conditions? Since the paragraphs now go through P, I think.
Yeah, I was able to fix that.
Okay.
It was just some extra enters in there that created
Yeah, I just want to make sure
additional
it's
letters.
the document works right.
Correct.
Yeah, are you, so you're comfortable?
Yeah.
Are you comfortable?
It's only my speech, about half of this is irrelevant, but I've been overruled by the trustees of the village. They're crazy, but they hand the owner and the council a lot of work.
So we're voting on,
Cross-access sucks.
we're voting on moving this forward, not whether the trustees
Yes,
are crazy or
I've
not.
been overruled.
So
I'm gonna,
you're a yes,
I'm
move
a
forward.
yes, I'm a yes,
Okay,
subject to
okay.
the saying, and this cross-access thing is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever encountered.
I'm sure the trustees watching are relieved.
For the record,
I'm comfortable.
tell the mayor.
Forward.
Amanda, how about you?
Comfortable.
Okay. So, looks like we're good to move forward. I'd like to make a motion to adopt this resolution for conditional approval of the 71 Hill Street application, right? Second?
Second the motion.
Second, thank
Yeah,
you.
that's good, thank you.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I do want to say, I know you were working very hard for your client over the last few days to get us to this point. I hope they appreciate that.
That's what we get.
So
That's-
I noticed it.
That's,
So
thank
I
you.
think we
I-
take it on
that-
notice.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
We're good? If we can move on right to the next item on the agenda, 560 Wickapog Road.
For the applicant, John Bennett.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Um,
Good luck.
Ricky Fowler wanted me to give his apologies. He had a very important charity event that he had to go to, so he doesn't want anyone to think that his, not being here is reflective of any lack of seriousness. Of course, this is a critical thing for him. So we're at a point now where I'm going to ask you to close the public hearing on this. There was some conversations about a couple of legal documents that we've been working on. I know Kim has been working on them. There's the agricultural reserve document. There were some requests to take one or two things out of it that you would typically find within the right to farm law, most notably commercial composting or agricultural composting, and that's been agreed to limit that only to the site or to other farms that the Fowler family owns. So that would be limited to that. And then there was some back and forth on the language of the access to the pond. The board will remember that originally we showed it at 15 feet on lot number 6, I think it was, but it fares out at the end. I think that was your request, Mr. Chairman. It fares out at the end so you can get some equipment down there. Not surprisingly, it's been limited to not the general public, but the village of Southampton and the trustees of the freeholders and commonalty for testing and for any sort of remediation. So that was a real bone of contention. I will tell you that I think that is an ask which was improper, but we nevertheless have conceded. And I think that is a very, very important thing for the board to realize. We have affirmatively conceded to give access to the public over this property. And as long as those safeguards are there, which I think the document will do, that it can't be, just public access for general riparian purposes, we're happy.
We're not giving access to the public. It's just the village and the F&C trustees.
Yeah,
Correct.
well, that's fine, as long as it's kept to that, because God forbid, people are down there doing something other than under the auspices of either one. But I think that's been taken care of. The Ag Reserve document is fairly straightforward. But again, these are things that are a little bit of the cart before the horse, because these are things that would be dealt with in your preliminary approval. I'm not asking for a resolution of preliminary approval tonight. I'm asking you to close the public hearing. And the public hearing is for the purposes of allowing the public to speak. I think Mr. Bragman's client has spoken quite a few times. I think Mr. McMaster, I don't know whether his client is here or not, has spoken. So all of the input that you have is here. I'm not asking for a substantive determination tonight. Understand that. There comes a time when I will ask you for a substantive determination, specifically a preliminary site plan approval. But it's very, very important to understand the structure and function of what happens. So, assuming for the purposes of argument that there are things that are still open in people's mind, that's fine, because we're not at that stage yet. We're at the public hearing stage, and the public hearing has been open for, the public hearing, it was interesting what happened here. The public hearing was open before secret determination, and then it was continued after the secret determination. So the public, particularly in light of the fact that there was a negative declaration issued, the public has had much, 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 much more input than even the New York State Village Law requires. If a board is going to issue a negative declaration, there's not even any requirement that there be a public hearing before that. But you did that in an abundance of caution. So before you issued your negative declaration, you had substantial public comment. And then after you issued your negative declaration, you've had substantial public comment. And I'm simply asking you this evening to do what I think is proper and appropriate and due, which is to close the public hearing. That, again, is not a substantive determination on your part. It's simply a request that you acknowledge that portion of the process is, we're at that point. You close the public hearing. Again, I'm not asking you for a final, strike that, for a preliminary approval. I think we've given the board everything that they've asked for on this. We've done everything that we can do. I will remind the board that the yield on this property is 12 lots. And you're coming up with 7. We filed the 10-lot subdivision. The board said, can you do better? A lot of soul searching went on, a lot of conversations with brokers and appraisers. And the determination was that we would give you a 7-lot subdivision, which is 5 lots less than the yield. I'm a little bit eating my words with my client. I'll be very candid with you, because I said in all my years of doing this, with a 7-lot subdivision with a 12-lot yield, you're going to fly through, because it is so generous. The intrinsic mitigation is obvious to anybody who's been involved in this sort of work for even, for any amount of time. So we've been, as the Fowler family always has been, very good citizens, very good stewards of the property. This property is specifically exempted from the mandatory cluster requirements of the village code specifically. It does not, and that's something that you can't forget. But despite that fact, there's a 25% agricultural reserve area. Agricultural reserve areas are not the same as open space up in the moraine, where you can't touch them. The whole idea is that active farming goes on these ag reserve properties. They're not pretty fields to look at with planted in poppies. They're supposed to be used for agriculture. And that's what you have going here. And again, I have to remind you that this is a totally voluntary cluster. The code amendments to the Southampton Village Code that talk about open space, and it would be 20%, and we've given you 25 agricultural reserve area, specifically did not apply to subdivisions that were submitted prior to the date of that law, but we've done that nevertheless. So again, I'm not here asking you for a preliminary approval. There'll come a time when I'm going to ask you for that, but I'm simply asking you to close the public hearing. The public has had more than adequate opportunity to be heard, both before and after the negative declaration, and certainly since after the negative declaration. I don't have to tell you how much material that the opposition has put in the file, all of which I think we've successfully pared away and refuted. But be that as it may, there comes a time to stop, and we're at that point. So again, I would very, very, very respectfully, I would thank you for the way that you've handled this. I think you've been very fair. I think it's a little slow, but fair.
Thorough.
So again, you have my request.
Kim, your advice?
I think I'd like to see if there are other people who want to speak, and then I'll.
Okay.
Good evening, Chairman London, fellow board members. Tiffany Fergenti from Lynn Garner Dunn, Fergenti and Ranke, co-counsel with Mr. Bagman on behalf of 91 Fowler LLC. There remain several issues that prevent this subdivision from being approved, and I think warrant keeping this hearing open as a public hearing. I think that the desire to close the public hearing is a desire to silence the critique of certain issues that perpetuate with respect to the subdivision and the documents that we've requested to see. One of these issues, frankly, is insurmountable. It's the agricultural reserve. It's not agriculture or open space. Lot 8 of this subdivision, what the applicant submits as an agricultural lot and an agricultural reserve, is developed with buildings, garages, driveways, sheds, an office, a fueling station, parking for cars, tractor trailers, and even a 2-story residence. By any reasonable measure, this is not open farmland. You've all seen the photos, the aerial maps, and hopefully taken the time to drive the area to see it for yourself. Lot 8 is a commercial lot. The Suffolk County Department of Health has already identified it as such, classifying it as a commercial lot with existing buildings, even requiring the applicant to submit a commercial typical plot plan. And the applicant does not dispute this. In a May letter to Suffolk County, the applicant said, Lot 8 is a commercial lot that is to be an agricultural reserve area, and further confirmed, quote, "This will not be open space." The size of the buildings in the reserve area are even larger than the maximum size for 1-story buildings in the village's business zones. The largest barn is 6,814 square feet, well beyond the 5,000 square foot maximum. The idea of preserving this area from development through an agricultural easement is a complete fiction. It is already developed. Unfortunately, despite our request for them, key application documents such as the proposed agricultural easement, the pond access easement, and an engineer's report that Ms. Rickmers described was forthcoming during the October 20th meeting have not been provided for public review and comment. We submit that this is a violation of the transparency mandated by the open meetings law. But we've looked at the agricultural easement the applicant has submitted and the comments made by council, and the expectation is that the easement will provide for agricultural uses as described under the state agricultural and markets law. To proceed with any easement which broadly permits agricultural use as defined in section 301 of the agricultural and markets law is a critical misstep. What the village accepts as agriculture under Village Code 116-2 is far more restrictive than the state statute. It is the village law that controls here, not the state law. And if you read the village code, the definition of agriculture says that is the cultivation of the soil for food products and other useful or valuable growths of the field, including field crops, fruits, vegetables, trees, shrubs, plants, and flowers, and including agricultural greenhouses. The normal preparation of such products for market shall be considered an accessory use, provided that it is not a separate and distinct business. That is in the village code. So while the agricultural markets law broadly contemplates farm operations, the village code contemplates farming, the cultivation of the soil. It only allows the preparation of products for market as secondary accessory uses, and only if it is not a separate business from the farming. This distinction matters, especially here where the applicant currently leases a substantial portion, if not all, of the proposed reserve area to Summerhill Farms, a large corporation engaged in agriculture, but also non-agricultural commercial activities. Mr. McFarland, you voiced concerns about the reserve area being subordinate to agriculture and serving at least 2 other farms outside of the village. And interestingly, the agricultural reserve narrative submitted by the applicant during SECRA didn't even mention Summerhill Farms. The board is hurrying towards designating this obviously commercial lot as an ag reserve without understanding the full scope of what's going on there. What are the commercial buildings being used for? How much of the activity on Lot 8 supports farming conducted elsewhere? What do the COs permit? And do these permitted uses conflict with the purpose of an ag reserve or the definition of agriculture in the village code? The board cannot make a reasoned determination on this ag reserve without clear answers to these questions. And we, as the public, should have an opportunity to review this agricultural easement and comment on it to see if it's restrictive enough. Because the one that was submitted long ago provides that there can be, it says nothing herein shall be construed to preclude the grantor from erecting or constructing agricultural accessory buildings or structures. That's not permitted under the village's definition of agriculture. And so we should have an opportunity to view the easement and comment. Transparency is important and it should be afforded in these circumstances. And so we would submit that the ag easement that was submitted by the applicant lacks basic safeguards. It contains no prohibition on new structures or commercial leasing. In fact, it permits further development of potentially substantial non-residential buildings. It permits certain types of livestock otherwise restricted under the code, and is silent or ambiguous regarding short-term or temporary non-agricultural activities. Adopting the state's broader definition violates village regulations and could even expand more over time. It would permit a remarkable amount of additional construction in order to serve the small portion of land that may actually be farmed. Consider that a significant portion of the land is even excluded from the county's certified agricultural district 5. It's not even within the agricultural district of Suffolk County, and so it's not even subject to the ag markets law. This parcel simply does not qualify as agriculture under the village code. If the board accepts this configuration, the precedent will be that any gravel or industrial yard can be called an ag reserve to claim the environmental benefits and density allowances intended only for genuine farmland. This is the last parcel of farmland in the village. The community will remember this decision. This could be the moment when the village of Southampton allowed the last remaining piece of historic farmland to be developed in exchange for a commercial lot. That's a bad deal for the residents of this village. The reserve area may have been placed in the corner with good intentions in the past, but it's not too late to make changes. Early in this process, Nelson and Pope, the village's former environmental consultant, recommended alternative layouts that would preserve a scenic buffer along Fowler Street and maintain open views toward the farmland to the east in the town. That's the very same idea that recently surfaced again. There's a reason that this concept has persisted. It's because scenic farmland and open space is what's valued in this village. It says so right in the comprehensive plan. The board must look beyond momentary inconvenience of making design modifications to this proposal and choose the outcome that truly serves the village. It's your duty to do so. The applicant also hasn't addressed the cottage. They seek to retain this 2-story cottage within the proposed ag reserve. There was a 1990 zoning board of appeals decision that I had referenced several months ago, and it expressly conditioned the approval of that cottage on a critical limitation that if the parcel, lot 4, formerly lot 4, which is what is being subdivided here, were ever subdivided in the future, or if agricultural use ever ceased, that the residential use of that cottage had to end. And the current application proposes exactly what the 1990 ZBA decision prohibits, subdividing the parent parcel while continuing residential use of the cottage. And allowing the cottage to remain as a residence in the ag reserve further undermines the credibility of the reserve designation, but it's also a zoning violation. And we know that this cottage does not support agricultural uses. We've showed you the residential rental listings. Mr. McFarland has previously commented on the evaporation of agricultural land for residential housing in the village. And also this zoning violation cannot go unaddressed. Subdivision approval should be denied unless and until the residential use of the cottage is formally and permanently discontinued and the reserve area is redesigned to reflect genuine open space. With respect to the access easement to Phillips Pond, which again we have not had the opportunity to view or comment on, as it relates to Phillips Pond, this board repeatedly described access as critical. The board chose not to address these concerns at the environmental review stage and instead deferred it to the subdivision approval stage. And despite its importance, as with the agricultural easement, the board hasn't made this easement available for public review and comment. Although access to the pond has been the board's concern, it was only recently that the applicant proposed a 15-foot wide easement in Lot 6 and a temporary staging area. Still, the board members have expressed concerns about whether the easement is adequate and what the final language would say. These are valid concerns because these modifications raise more questions than they answer. For example, as for the temporary staging area, what does temporary mean? Are there time limits, days, weeks, months, years? What if longer remediation is required? Can it be extended? The map notes the staging areas to be restored after each use. Well, who's responsible for restoring it? Does each use mean each day, or the entire project? Who determines when the project's complete? Who pays for restoration? I mean, these are all issues that should be outlined in the document that everyone should have an opportunity to review. As part of this subdivision application, the applicant proposes a vegetation buffer of the wetlands. They propose using new trees, shrubs, grasses, and wildflowers, meaning existing vegetation will be removed. There will be clearing, digging, and replanting. This requires a wetlands permit. At minimum, we have not even seen the proposed landscape plan. This needs to be addressed now and cannot be left to the disjointed efforts of future developers of these lots. As to the path down the pond, is 15 feet sufficient? We haven't heard any discussion about what maintenance, testing, or remediation could entail, but real-world examples suggest this path is not sufficient. Consider the dredging of Town Pond in 2021 in East Hampton. That required a large excavator, on-site staging of dredged material, and means to transport to off-site disposal locations. Lake Agawam's algae harvesting involved testing stations, water extraction equipment, specialized oxidation equipment, and mobile offices. Can this proposed area support similar remediation efforts? Not to mention that it has been completely ignored that the staging area is placed within the wetland itself, the most environmentally sensitive part of the site. There's been no substantive discussion by the board about what the easement must include, what standards it must meet, or what protections are required. There's been no discussion of coordination with the Suffolk County Department of Health, which has informed the applicant that a covenant for a water line easement and access is required. It's also unclear whether the Southampton trustees, as owners of the pond, have been notified or consulted. Additionally, when the placement and scope of the easement is finalized, the map should be updated to reflect the lot area of Lot 6, accounting for the easement to make sure zoning requirements are met. Ms. Grove Holman pointed out a few weeks ago, once the subdivision is approved, Phillips Pond will be landlocked. These unanswered questions show why the easement cannot be rushed or approved without public scrutiny. This is precisely the moment when the board must insist on clear, comprehensive, and enforceable easement language rather than resolving these issues behind closed doors. Additional issues include the existence of flagpole lots, which we have spoken about extensively before, flag lots, which are expressly prohibited under Village Code 97-38H. The code forbids flag lot form, and for the board to approve a configuration that so clearly contains flag lots would directly contravene both the substance and the intent of the village's subdivision regulations. For these reasons, this application is far from meeting the standards required for subdivision approval, and until it is remedied, it should be denied, and respectfully, the public hearing should be kept open so that the public has a continuing opportunity to comment and point out these deficiencies and hold the applicant accountable to making sure that there's compliance with the village code and that the residents' interests are looked out for. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions this end? No. Questions here?
Go review.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Earlier on, you were, is it your position that the board should be designating what we've been talking about as ag reserve as not an ag reserve, but as open space, an entirely different concept?
I'm saying designating it as an agricultural reserve, I believe, is improper under the village code. Whether the board determines that it should be designated as open space, I'm not specifically speaking to that, but I'm saying it doesn't fit the criteria of an ag reserve either under the agricultural markets law or the village code.
Why not?
Because the definition of agriculture under the code is cultivation of the soil, and there's operations that are going on that have been acknowledged by the applicant and the board that aren't cultivating the soil on this parcel. It's being leased out to another entity that is
Cultivating the soil.
Yes.
I'm not sure that that's the case. There's been evidence in the record that the operations that are going on this commercial lot 8 are used to support other parcels outside of this parcel.
As well as this one. And is it your contention that this area that we're talking about is a potential ag reserve? The buildings there are commercial buildings not supporting agricultural business?
We at least know that the cottage has been rented out. There was listings that were located, prior listings that have been rented out for residential use, so that's not supporting agriculture. We don't know. The answer is we don't know, because the only information that we received was a narrative during the secret process about what the history of agriculture there, and it didn't mention that the property was being leased to Summerhill Farms. It didn't say anything about what each barn or these structures were being used for or what it was supporting, whether it was exclusively operations that were occurring on this parcel or other parcels owned by Summerhill, owned by the Fowler family. So we're really in the dark. There should be more of an explanation and more facts to determine what is actually going on, but we don't have the answers to that.
Beyond what the applicant and its counsel have told us.
Correct.
Which they've told us that house is being used for agricultural workers to house them, and they've told us that the barns are being used in support of their agricultural operations or their sublessees' agricultural operations on this property, the property across the street on the east side of Fowler, and another property that the Fowlers own north of the village.
I don't think in the agricultural narrative that was submitted in connection with the secret process, that level of detail was even presented. It didn't speak about leasing it out at all. It didn't speak about the cottage at all. In connection with the 1990s zoning board decision, the applicant was granted permission to use that cottage to support agricultural use, but that obviously didn't occur historically, as we know. So
I suggest you go back and check the video here, because I remember sitting here and listening to Mr. Bennett and Mr. Fowler saying that, in fact, everything that I stated was how it was being used. I don't know whether it's in the, I don't know whether it's in the file or not.
I was just talking about the narrative specifically that was presented in writing. So I can go and look at the videos, but I think there's more information that's needed.
Yep, okay, thank
Thank
you. Mr. Bregman.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. I'm Jeff Bragman, co-counsel with Lynn Gardner Law Firm, and I want to talk about the reserve area a little bit, but in a slightly different framework, if I may. Tiffany is correct that the commercial portion of the proposed reserve area is not in the county ag district. But nonetheless, the Ag and Markets guidelines for subdivisions that are creating reserve areas within the county ag district, and part of this is within the county ag district, contains some criteria that you look at when you evaluate whether the design is a good design or not a good design. And in doing that, they distinguish between a farmstead, which is an area that's developed and has impervious surfaces and buildings and structures. They distinguish that from a farmable area, and they define them differently. And basically, to cut to the chase, what they say is that the farmstead should be appropriately sized in relationship to the remaining farmable area that you're leaving open. And to that end, their guidelines suggest that the farmstead be no more than 5% of the reserve area, with an optional discretionary 5% for additional impervious surfaces. Well, 5% of this 7.2 reserve area would be less than 1 acre, 0.72 acres. And there's a problem with this design of this reserve area because it's proposing 3.2 acres, more than 4 times the size that's recommended in the guidelines for this commercial area. So put in the framework of the standards, the objective standards that are enacted under the Agriculture and Markets law, which the applicant wants to kind of squeeze the uses into, there's a reasonable basis to state that this is a poorly designed reserve area. It grossly exceeds the recommended size of the farmstead. And when you're looking at the reserve area, I would suggest to the board that, sure, today, now this commercial area might well be used on this property. It's 30 acres. They're farming about 30 acres here. But at the end of the day, after they get through with this application, if it's approved as they've proposed, they're going to be farming 4 acres. So what looks to be reasonable, and it's related to agricultural production now, and it may relate to some property, off-site, or it may relate to property in the town, is not so reasonable when at the end of the day, they're only going to be leaving 4 acres open. And you don't need agricultural housing for 4 acres. There's a history that this place was used as a guest cottage or a rental unit. And the ZBA decision is absolutely clear that when you divide Lot 4, which was the original 47-acre setting, the house has got to go. And in the absence of any information about what's going on with that commercial area, what's going on with the house, again, Mr. Bennett wants to close the record and say, done deal, everything's fine. Just we're going to give you an easement that says we can do anything that the Ag and Markets law permits. Well, they can't do equestrian uses. That's permitted under the Ag and Markets law. and it's not permitted under your local law. So what he's trying to do is leave it open so that he can argue another day and try to, blast through whatever restrictions there are in that easement. And we're saying we get an opportunity to look that easement over and help you figure out what's going on. And the other issue that Ms. Frugente raised validly is what the heck is going on with the businesses there? You don't know what's going on, and she's correct when she says the applicant didn't come in and tell you who owns the businesses, what corporations they are, what products they're making, are they doing landscape lighting, didn't tell you what properties that commercial area is serving. You don't know any of those facts, and she's correct. The narrative that they presented was this lovely, inviting, enticing narrative about what agriculture's been like over the last 100 years. Great. It was a lovely description, but it had no facts, figures, corporate names. You haven't examined how the uses could change, how they could change hands, what's a pre-existing non-conforming use, what isn't. Come on. You're gonna write an easement on your own between her, the applicant's lawyer and your lawyer, and not know those facts? Doesn't work. Also, let's look at what's going on here in the framework of SECRA. One of the impacts that you're supposed to look at is long-range related impacts to this, and one of the areas that those impacts you have to look at is to the setting. Well, the setting here is what Ms. Frugente correctly referred to as Lot 4, which was the original 47-acre parcel, okay? And they developed that over years, and they had a right to do it, and they did it at piecemeal. Well, what happened in those piecemeal divisions of 47 acres? Not a single acre was preserved. Not a single square foot of farmland was preserved. So today, when you look at the long-range related indirect impact of what they're proposing, out of 47 acres, you are going to preserve the grand total of farmable land, open farmable land, 4 acres, 9%. I'm going to tell you, I know you work hard at your job. You're not going to get applauded from the residents of the village for preserving 4 acres of open farmland. And the slicing and dicing of, when the chair asks Ms. Frugente, are you saying that this is open space, which is totally different than open farmland? The farmland reserve law in the village comes from your cluster law. That's where it's elucidated. And actually in that law, and this is not a voluntary cluster plan in any way, shape, or form. I don't know why the council keeps referring to it as such. It's a voluntary cluster plan. It doesn't cluster anything. It doesn't preserve open space by clustering lots. It doesn't adjust lot lines. And I'm going to say again, because he repeats it again as if he's doing a filibuster, what a great favor he's done to the village by dropping his yield from 12 to 7. And what I've said before, what I've said before is that the yield on a property is meaningless. The yield is just shows you can meet setbacks. That's all it shows. This property is unique in one way. It is highly constrained with a very threatened natural resource, which is the pond, and it's highly constrained because it's got a swath of the 100-year floodplain running right across the center of the property. And that you've received stark warnings from the Suffolk County Planning Commission telling you that it is dangerous to human safety to be putting infrastructure in a 100-year floodplain. That's what they said. Go look at their report. Mr. Bennett will tell you, well, that's just a comment they made. It's not a condition. Well, true, but it's a fact that building in a 100-year floodplain or putting a septic system in a 100-year floodplain is not a good idea. You're not going to get applause from the residents of the town of the village of Southampton for letting them do that. So And she's absolutely correct in telling you that this house has got to go under that 1998 Zoning Board of Appeals decision. And Mr. Bennett wants to close the record. It's like, let's close the record. We don't need to talk about that. I also want to talk to you about the drainage and flooding issues here, because there's been a lot of confusion, and some of it was intentionally, I think, there was an attempt to try to make it more confusing than it is. This property is kind of what you see is what you get, if you think about it, because when you look at it from Fowler Street, if you start like visualizing Fowler Street down to the pond, obviously the grade at Fowler Street is kind of high. It's like 12 feet of grade elevation. And then as you get to where the subdivision road is, it's a little bit lower. And right below the subdivision road is where the flood zone kicks in. That's at about 9 feet elevation, right about 9 feet. It's right across the center of the property. And the elephant in the room that nobody is really talking about is the pond at the bottom. And in fact, the applicant came to you with an expert who used 40-year-old technology to try to tell you not to believe what your eyes and common sense suggest. What do your eyes and common sense suggest? They suggest that water rolls downhill and that groundwater is feeding the pond, because if you start at elevation 9 or 12 and the pond is at 3 or 2 or 1, where do you think the water's going? It's going into the pond. The applicant produced an expert using 40-year-old technology from the Nintendo era that said, groundwater's not going to go in the pond because of hydrostatic pressure. Well, Dr. Gobler gave you state-of-the-art computer imaging about what's going on there. It is feeding the pond. And if you didn't need to know it by believing him, you could know it by believing what's happened during the short time that we've had the opportunity to comment in public. And that is, between May, when we came in, and Dr. Gobler said, hey, this pond has a history of harmful algae blooms, and I have the years here, 2012, 2013, 2019, 2021. Again, what did the applicant say? Produced somebody that's not an expert, not qualified to say, oh no, they weren't harmful algae blooms. Well, by October of this year, while we were discussing, what the heck was going on with the commercial part of the reserve area, by October, Dr. Gobler came in and said, guess what? There's now a harmful algae, a blue-green algae outbreak, dangerous to human health, reported to the state registry, and it's gone from being a hyper-eutrophic resource to a dangerous resource. And the answer you get from the applicant is, we just used normal farming techniques over the last decades, century. That, so what? And the board's reaction, if I remember correctly, was, well, we're not going to make them do anything different than we've made anybody else do. And this was in the face of evidence that you now have a resource that was, threatened, endangered, that's dangerous. It can kill a pet dog. We lost a pet dog in East Hampton that made the mistake of sniffing or licking a pond that had a blue-green algae outbreak. And the reaction of the board is, we're not going to do anything different. Well, if you don't do anything different, first of all, let me say, before you reach that conclusion, the governor of the state of New York thought you should do something different, because in 2024, she appropriated $225 million in funding, acknowledging that this area that we live in and this pond is adjacent to has the worst water quality in its ponds and the worst incidence of the outbreaks of blue-green algae. That's how serious this is. That's how important this drainage is. So when I talk about drainage and flooding, and I say what you see is what you get, and Mr. Bennett, cited a couple of subdivisions that I can refer to by name, saying, they had reserve areas just like what we did. Well, they didn't in the two subdivisions. First of all, they had no structures on their reserve areas. They were both subdivisions of about 30 acres. One was, I should give you the names rather than flail around on it. if I can find them, which I probably can't. But at any rate, they were both comparably sized to this, but the reserve areas had no structures on them, no buildings, no businesses going on. And the real kicker is they had depth to groundwater of like 12 feet, 14 feet, 16 feet, and no flood zones and no threatened pond. So this is an entirely different animal that you're looking at. And when we talk about drainage and flooding, the gist, the big picture is the closer you get up toward Fowler Street, the higher the land is, so the easier it is to put a septic system in. Here, two of the septic systems that they've proposed to the health department are in the flood zone. Two of the lots have septic systems within the flood zone, the 100-year flood zone. And then the lots that line up along the pond, in order to get near to the elevation they need when they stack the components, they're putting the septic systems very near the drainage to the road, okay? And nobody's really paid attention to that, but that is an enormous, enormous drainage system. It has 55 drainage wells that come out of that. And that is a major engineering feat. Why does it have all that drainage? Because it's right on the edge of the 100-year floodplain. And where do you think the waters go when the precipitation comes down? That's the path they take. So they needed to intercept a gigantic amount of water there. And the proposal for this project is to put the septic systems right up against, very near, that septic system with its dry wells that they don't hold the water, they empty it. And that kind of flooding has the potential for flooding septic systems, and when the septic systems flood, they don't function, they travel to the pond, and there you go. You exacerbate the problem. And I hope the board understands that these new IA systems, these innovative alternative systems, do not solve the problem. They produce septic effluent that is 100 times higher levels than the existing levels in the pond. And you got that from Dr. Gobler. It's phosphorus and nitrates. So they treat nitrates, but when they're discharged, they're 100 times. They call it orders of magnitude. I had to look that up. I don't know what that meant. But it means increments of 100. There are 100 times more nitrates coming out of those septic systems than the natural concentrations in the pond, and they don't treat phosphorus. And those are the two nutrients that cause these blue-green algae outbreaks. So when you look at the drainage from the big picture and step back, that's what I've been trying to portray to you, is that they're going to put septic systems right up against where this drainage system is. And another thing that the board is not, I don't think, paid attention to is on a previous case that I was involved in, that H2M was involved in, H2M recommended to the planning board, a prior planning board, and a prior zoning board, not to use the 3-inch rainfall anymore in evaluating drainage. Why? Because with global warming and climate change, precipitation has intensified. And that has been incorporated into secret regulations. It's in the regulations that you have to look at intensified rain, and for our area, a 5-inch rainstorm is what they should be calculating. They didn't do it here. And it was H2M that was my expert on the case that recommended it, and the planning board agreed to it, and the zoning board agreed to it. It was a case on Hill Street. You can look it up. So what I'm saying to you is, not only are you in an intensive flood area that's dangerous, but the only drainage information you have is the road drainage system. That's all they've given you. And in January of this year, H2M said, we want a site-wide drainage calculation. That means for the entire property. Why? Because open land drains, okay? It's not like if you have grass on a property, it doesn't drain. It still drains. It contributes. And they've never given you a site-wide drainage plan, which H2M required in its January memo, and they've never followed up on it. And they never changed the intensity of the rainfall. So you're stepping toward closing a hearing, and you don't even know what the total contribution of drainage is from the entire property, and the data that you have is incomplete, and the capacity even of the road drainage plan is inadequate. And it doesn't meet SEQRA standards, and it doesn't follow your own precedent. So, and then when you combine that with the fact that they're pushing septic systems right up against this drainage plan, you know, there's something to look at here. And we're saying to you that's a concern and remains a concern. I also want to say that H2M and Suffolk County Planning Commission wisely, cautiously recommended a phase 1 investigation of the soils. And this, I have to say, I think you dropped the ball on, and it's unthinkable under these circumstances. Yes, the Fowlers have been farming the property the same way probably everybody's been farming the property for 100 years at least. But we know by modern science that farming, by whatever techniques they've been using, leaches a lot of chemicals, a lot of metals, a lot of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides into those soils. This decision of this board is going to change agricultural lands into residential properties, and I'd want to know before I dig my swimming pool out or put in my folly or whatever I'm going to do, my decking, I'd want to know what's blowing in the wind. I want to know if there's lead in the soil. I want to know if there's arsenic in the soil. And it's not enough to look at this applicant who is, you know, a good citizen, not saying anything negative about the Fowlers. They've been good citizens, and they've done well as farmers and set a great example. But they're the same as anybody else. And your own expert and the Suffolk County Planning Commission said run a phase 1 soil test and find out what's going on before you act. And you should do that. Because doing things the way you've done them for the last 100 years results in blue-green algae outbreaks, and it results in arsenic in the soil and a lot of difficulties. And planning means know before you go. That's what it means. And right now, there are issues you don't know about, and we think they remain a concern. Now, I've taken a lot of time, so I want to shift to something I think the board is starting to do well. And I wanted to say it particularly to Hannah Abrams and Amanda Grove Holman, and also Alan McFarland, because you raised a legitimate issue about open space views, farmland views. And I wanted to say that in the cluster law that created it, that those terms are used interchangeably, Mr. Chairman. They're used interchangeably because they recognize that farmable lands are also open space lands. And they wanted to preserve both aspects of that. And it's stated in your local law. And I think it was, I don't know who brought it up first. I don't want to commend anyone or, you know, give anybody a gold star. But the fact of the matter is that you've learned over time by looking at this that the new configuration of the reserve area, which you talked about as protecting farmland views, really didn't do a good job because you were looking at Wickapog to do the short little turn before you get on Fowler. That, you know, let's call a spade a spade. That's the least attractive view of these farm fields because that's the entrance to this commercial property. And so you properly were so concerned about it, you said, you got to have a buffer there. We want to know what the buffer is. By the way, you don't have any detail on that either yet today, but Mr. Bennett wants to close the hearing. But it was so unsightly that you wanted to buffer it because it just was not attractive to look at. The farm views are on Fowler Street, and 2 or 3 of the board members, I think, wisely realized that and said, hey, since you're rejiggering the lot area, we'd like to see, a better protection of farmland views. And you can call it open space, you can call it open farm fields, but we're talking about farmable land, not the structures that used to support a 30-acre parcel that are now going to support a 4-acre parcel. There is something you can do. I want to say it less emphatically, perhaps, than I did last time, and just tell you briefly, I once ran for political office, and somebody came up to me and was joking and said, what's a guy like you doing running for political office? It's crazy, And I kind of laughed it off, and somebody who knew better came up to me and said, no, when somebody says that to you, he's really asking you, why are you running? You got to think about that and answer him. And I thought about it. And what I decided and knew instinctively, it took me a little while to formulate it, was I'm running for office because my town is my home, and I want to protect it. Now, people may come up to you as members of the board and say, why do you deal with this? Why do you put yourself through this aggravation? You got 2 crazy lawyers. One guy says black, the other says white. Why are you doing it? Well, I would suggest to you that the answer to that question is the same. You are doing it because the village of Southampton is your home and you want to protect it. And Mr. McFarland joined you and said, I'm worried about what's going to happen if the Fowlers stop farming. I'm worried about why we're losing this. And I want to tell you that you have an opportunity here. You may not be able to do it tonight. You won't be able to do it tonight. But if you took another meeting and you had some open discussion and you understood, and I hope you understand, I'm going to say something obvious, that each one of you has one vote. Nobody's privileged on this board. Nobody, cracks a whip. You all have a vote. And all you need to do is discuss and collaborate on these issues. Take the time to do it and make this reserve area what it should be. Make it protect farm views. Make it preserve more farmable land. Make sure you know what's going to happen on those other structures, and do what you need to do, even if you need to change some boundary lines. And you can make this better, and you should make it better. Because at the end of the day, when somebody comes up to you, whether they're mad at you for what you did or they're praising you for what you did, the answer is the same. You will be able to say to them, I did it because the village of Southampton is my home and I wanted to protect it. And I urge you tonight to think about that and collaborate, talk, listen, and do better on this. Thank you.
Jeff, can I ask you a couple questions? In the beginning, you talked about the distinction between farmstead versus farmable area.
Yes.
Was that part of the Suffolk County, or later on you said
Yes.
Ags and Markets?
It's in the Suffolk County Ag and Markets Division puts out guidelines. It's in the guidelines, and they are guidelines for reserve areas that are created within Suffolk County agricultural districts.
Okay, and my other question was, you had mentioned a distinction, you mentioned the number 5%.
Yes, 5-inch rainfall versus 3-inch rainfall.
No, I got that one, but
Oh,
this is way
5%,
earlier. This
yes,
is in the
I'm sorry,
beginning.
yes. Their recommended limits on the size of a farmstead, which is what this commercial area would be defined as, is
That's guidelines, Suffolk County
in the
guidelines,
guidelines, is 5% of the reserve area, because they want it to be proportionate to the open farmable area, because they're looking at a farmstead that's reasonably related in size to the open farmable area.
And then my last question is, you had mentioned probably halfway through about cluster, and Mr. Bennett had said that there was a specific exemption from cluster, but maybe I misunderstood what you were saying.
What I've said is just that Mr. Bennett has invited comparison of this application to a cluster plan, but
Okay.
keeps referring to it as a cluster plan, and tonight he sort of combined the idea of a cluster plan talking about density. He was seemingly trying to suggest to you that by dropping his density, he was doing something that a cluster plan would accomplish. That's not correct. You're talking about two separate concepts that are entirely different. Because the yield on a property is merely a dimension. It shows dimensional compliance, that you meet all this.
I misunderstood. I thought you were trying to argue that he was not, the applicant was in fact not exempt from clustering.
No.
That's not what you said.
I know he's exempt from
Okay.
but he's been trying to say, well, we're saving 25% of the property, but when you look at it, that's really not correct. Because he's got this big commercial chunk of 3.2 acres. And you have the board has the power to say, that's not acceptable under SECRA and our local law. You have the authority to do that. You don't have to ask permission to do it. You can say, we want to see more, we want to see a better plan. You can make it happen, and you should make it happen. Thank
I
you.
have a question.
Oh, okay.
We've said that we've made a poor trade in accepting the corner as our reserve area versus another plot. And the reason we moved it to the corner was to try and create view sheds and more transparency into the farming. That was what was done at that time. And you pointed out a lot of problems with that. What would be your list of things that would need to be corrected in order to make that work? Because I have consistently relied on the fact that I thought a view shed, we would be looking into farmland. And then I read in the minutes from the last meeting that someone was saying something like, if we're farming privet, and if we cut the privet down, you'd be looking at other privet. So what I trusted as a view for the public and for people to see some sort of agricultural land is changing. And my thought is that we can require that privet come down, and if privet is the crop, so be it. That can happen further in, and we'll see privet as crop.
Yes.
But we have the power to create view sheds.
Yes, you
At
do.
least as far as I understood it,
Yes,
always.
you do. Yes. And I frankly, I think when Mr. Bennett said that, it was a rather flip comment like, well, we'll grow whatever we want, and if we grow privet, it's going to block your view anyway. Well, not so fast. You have the power under SECRA, clearly, under your comprehensive plan. There's a multitude of policies that suggest that the planning board has the power, especially in the last undivided farm fields in the village, to ensure one of the last farm fields, undivided farm fields, okay? It need not be the last. It's certainly a very significant area, and it's also a highly sensitive area. I don't know many that are as sensitive that have the pond on one side and a 100-year floodplain through it. There is a property in the town next door that looks similarly situated. But yes, you have the power to do it. For example, and you could change the yield on this property. You could move lot number. You could extend the reserve area across lot number 1, leaving lot number 2, or across lot number 1 and 2, and leave the lots below the subdivision road. And in fact, today, as I pointed out to you, the septic system for lot 2, I believe it is in the 100-year floodplain. Not a good idea. And also the lots below the subdivision road, except for the last flag lot, the last 2 lots, those have septic system pushed very close to the drainage, about which you need more information. But for example, you could extend the reserve area across Fowler. That's a possibility. You could do an L shape off of the reserve area. There's a lot you could do here. And I suggest you take the time and talk it over and see if you can get some consensus on this. I'm not telling you to, that anybody can run away with this, and this is not a punitive action. This is just a planning board doing what it does best, discussing and planning. I'm perhaps a little more, I've been a planning board attorney and a zoning board attorney, and I've been on the other side of boards. And I know what it's like to be rushed into a decision. It's not good. It's perfectly okay to say we need to take more time and we need to discuss this. This is, even if it's not the last undivided farmlands, this is, just looking at this place is astonishing. That's why the real estate is so expensive there. It's in your hands to do better here. preserve it. Do
And
better.
respect to the house, when you keep saying it's got to go, how would you recommend, what would be your position on that? And how we have the right to do that?
I don't see how, I would ask your attorney for her opinion, have her read the decision. To me, there's a complete clarity about it. I don't see any ambiguity. And it's frankly, it violates that. And secondly, another area that you could consider in terms of getting some more farmland here is that flag lot. That flag lot's illegal. Let them argue it on appeal,
Are you talking about Lot 7, Jeff?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's obviously a violation of the definition of flag lots. It's absolutely prohibited. This is a re-subdivision. It's illegal. It's unlawful. He's not entitled to that lot. That could be a lot that would be farmed. There's a lot you can do here. And this is not punishment. He's entitled to make a very good profit on it, and I'm sure he will, and everybody will be taken care of. Thank you for your time. I know I took some extra time.
Other questions? I had some. Early on in your speech, you mentioned a portion of the reserve is not in the ag district.
Right.
Explain to me the relevance of that fact.
Well,
Why does that matter?
well, you would. Well, first of all, he's arguing that he spent a lot of time saying, I want to get any use that's permitted under the Ag and Markets Law. And I think the reason that it's not there is because it was a single and separate lot and it was developed as a commercial lot. So why is it relevant? What's really relevant about the lot is it's a commercial lot. It's got a lot of buildings on it. And again, it might be justifiable if it's used to work a 30-acre field, although it's a lot of building for a 30-acre.
So that leads to my second question, which is, you keep saying it's 4 acres of farmable land, right? But those buildings are not just serving those 4 acres. Those are the 4 acres adjacent to those buildings. It's also serving another 30-plus acres right across the street.
I don't see that in the record. I don't know that in the record. The only thing we have in the record about what's being farmed here was 100 years of, farming by the Fowlers. We have no let's put it on the table and let's get the facts on that.
You represent the client. Your client is the
Same client,
property owner just next door to the south, correct?
just next.
Do you have a map that you could show
Yeah,
us
south.
where your
Yeah.
client is?
I don't do it. Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's,
Because there are sort of two lots that are adjacent right next to this property.
Yes.
This from board members.
He goes down the pond.
In the flood zone.
Just a second.
okay, we're here.
So you're the lot closer to the pond.
So it's
Yeah.
Yep. And
South
can you
and
can you
west.
show me where the 100-year floodplain is on your client's lot?
You want to take this up? It's the only one.
Yeah. And is the septic for that lot on this map too?
Yeah. I don't know if the septic is. I think I know where you're going. So maybe I can head you off at the pass.
Okay.
My client didn't build that house. That house was developed by the Fowlers.
That's absolutely.
Well, it was.
Look, I don't
We,
care.
we, we bought a developed lot. We didn't develop the lot.
That's not true.
It just
I represented the subdivider, and I represent you are now blatantly misrepresenting something, or you're ignorant of it.
Well,
just a second.
I
here,
may be
please.
mistaken, but my understanding was that he bought a house that was built.
They were simple questions, and I just want to hear from
Okay.
Mr. Bergman,
I
please.
don't know.
Okay. So,
It's
but
possible I'm wrong on that. I don't know.
Well, okay, but I want to understand that, to me, it looks like that house is in the 100-year floodplain.
It is.
And the septic is also in the 100-year floodplain. Do you know whether your client has a IA system or the old septic?
I don't know when the house, I don't know when the house was built.
And the 100-year floodplain,
Lipton and Green built it prior to the
it
IA
has
system.
curvaceous.
We can't have
Okay.
comments from the audience.
Yeah, okay. Just Mr. Bregman, please.
Yeah. If I am mistaken, I apologize. I was not deliberately stating an untrue fact. My understanding was that he built a developed property. I'm willing to be,
Yeah,
say I
okay.
was
I'm
erroneous.
just
if
looking at
it-
the map here,
yeah.
and it looks like it's all within, the entire lot's within the 100-year floodplain, but that's fine, that's all I had. You said something else about extending the reserve across Fowler Street, Todd. What did you
Yeah,
mean by that?
Let me, if I can point to it.
Yeah,
I want to stay on the record.
here.
What I was saying was, I'll turn it toward you.
You guys can hear this, right?
No, that's
Okay.
not how the system works.
Okay.
Okay, so let me go.
You can just point it.
Can we
No,
put up a
stand over
picture of the
there.
map on the table?
And use the microphones on the table, please.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, if you,
okay.
yeah, that'd be perfect. I think we can see.
Okay,
They're
so
there for it.
can I-
You gotta
Yeah,
sit, you
ju-
gotta
just
speak into the
please,
mic.
yeah, just sit down so we can,
Oh,
the microphones pick you up. And then they can get the,
What I was saying is that
Oh, there it is, okay.
that lot number 1 here on Fowler Street could be an extension of the reserve area, and that would create more,
so you're not talking about extending it east across Fowler Street. You're talking about extending it,
sort of south.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I wanted to
And
clarify.
I also pointed out that this flag lot is illegal.
It's not a flag lot.
That's Mr. Bennett's contention, and I'd rather, I'll
We're not here
debate
to
that
argue
one.
that, okay? You know,
appeal.
you both have a position on that. I think the board
Yeah.
is experienced enough to make their own determination along with our legal advisor, but let's keep moving.
Okay, I don't have, unless you have a question.
That's
Well, I
all
think that was the portion of that is what I was hoping, that when we traded the acreage under the house that was already an easement that was dedicated, that we could put more along Fowler toward the ocean, because I wanted a view shed that was more complementary as well with what's on the other side of the street, of a longer corridor looking into Fowler Street, which Mr. Bennett was very opposed to. And they summarily just added it further into the property, the extra footage. But I was hoping for some sort of view into agriculture, active agriculture, for as long as that would happen for years to come. And I was getting the impression that that was not going to happen. And so that's interesting to me that you think it should be in that area as well. I'm just noting that.
Well, ultimately, it's up to a majority on the board. It really is, that's how it's done. I mean, that's why I was urging you to try to find consensus, and maybe if you can get an agreement, you can get it done. We don't need our permission or Mr. Bennett's permission.
Any other questions for
Can I just
Mr.
ask one
Bregman?
more? Just Jeff, one more. In your experience, have you ever seen a municipality accept an agricultural easement that was not in an agricultural district? 'Cause I know I have, so I'm just, is that your experience?
I'm not suggesting that you can't put an
Okay.
easement over this, if that's where you're going.
Yeah, no, I didn't know if you were saying because the top half of it was not in an agricultural district.
No,
like-
no,
okay,
I'm
all
not
right.
saying you can't do. I think you can do what you want to do on that. I'm just saying, there's reason to look at that as, maybe worth investigating a little bit more in terms of the uses, the future changes, who owns it, and also under Ag and Markets has a similar language about it has to be one business that operates the processing and the farming. The language that Ms. Frugenti referred you to is also reflected in the Ag and Markets law, where they say you can have different processing elements for agriculture, but it has to be one business that does it. And that would be a problem here. 'Cause
So, an esteemed colleague of mine made the point that New York State Ag and Markets Law applies at the town level, but not a village level. How would you respond to that?
No, I think Ag and Markets Law can apply, but your village law is what controls you in this subdivision approval. That's what,
So you're saying that in your opinion, that using New York State Ag and Markets Law to, for lack of a better word, trump village level determination would not withstand
Withstand a preemption argument.
preemption argument?
I'm not saying it's, the Ag and Markets Law is, you can go to the Ag and Markets Department and argue that, something is unduly restrictive of agriculture. But it has to be, but site plan review is not an undue restriction. I guess the answer is subdivision review, site plan review are not undue restrictions on agriculture, and what would apply in this subdivision review is your subdivision law and your local zoning law. That's what controls here. And if you should not be writing an easement that says that says he can do anything the Ag and Markets Law says, because that would nullify your zoning, because your zoning, for example, doesn't permit him to do a horse farm here.
But if challenged under New York State Ag and Markets,
I don't think
Article
you can.
78,
No, I don't think you
someone
can.
could overturn local code.
Generally, they're harmonized. They're not in conflict, and you can't nullify zoning here. You can't say it doesn't apply here, and he can do anything he wants under Ag and Markets. You can't overrule zoning. The general rule on conflicts of law is that they have to be harmonized. You never, unless there's an ambiguity, you never, the law presumes that when laws are enacted, the people enacting them are aware of other laws and they're not deliberately contradicting them. So the general rule is if there's an apparent inconsistency, they should be harmonized. And you're not going to let New York State Ag and Markets overrule your more restrictive definition of agriculture.
Thank you. Would you like to respond to that same question? I'd like to hear your view on that.
Yeah, there are certain right to farm laws that would prohibit unnecessary impediments of farming. I don't think anything like that is being argued here.
Let's speak hypothetically to make it easier.
Okay,
Right
speak
now, let's say
hypothetically.
village code says I can't have a horse. I have a farm in the village, and I can't have a horse on that farm. And someone challenges that local code, village level code, and says, under New York Ag and Markets, I have a farm here, I can have a horse.
I think that unless the village could
Would
demonstrate...
you take that case?
Yeah, in a heartbeat. I think unless the village could demonstrate that that was a proper exercise of zoning law, such as they were trying to prohibit horses on half-acre parcels or something like that, which would be a reasonable interpretation, despite the fact that my Uncle John Grattan had a horse on about half an acre for a while. Yeah, that's probably an impediment. But I don't know why this is germane here. Why are we talking in a public hearing about hypotheticals? Why are we talking about that? The Ag and Markets Law is what is in the easement, as I've seen in all agricultural easements. And if there is some sort of variance between that and the local law, that's to be talked about when an application comes in. But
I think it's relevant. I'll answer that question. I think it's relevant in the context that, all throughout this application process, we've talked about New York Ag and Markets Law and making sure in our thinking and our understanding that we give due consideration to New York Ag and Markets Law. And then I heard earlier tonight, there's a view that, New York Ag and Markets law applies at the town level, not at the village. So
I've been
why are we
practicing-
giving consideration
I've been
to that?
practicing law for 43 years. I've represented a lot of developers of farmland, not only farmland, residential farmland, but also farms, horse farms, other types of farms, and I have never heard that. It makes absolutely no sense. Ag and Markets Section 301 and the Ag and Markets Law is a law of general application in the state of New York, and I think your counsel will probably let you know that.
Yep.
But I do want to respond to some things, and I'll try to do it in bullet points. First of all,
Can I steer you?
oh, I'm
just
so
what-
sorry.
Lot 7, can you address his argument that Lot 7 is a flag lot?
It's not a flag lot because the minimum frontage required in the village code, I've said this, your former council, Rick DePietris, would have agreed with me on this. There's no question about it. This has been gospel amongst the local bar forever. The minimum frontage for a lot, not a flag lot, the minimum frontage for a lot in the village of Southampton is 40 feet.
Okay. So
There's
it's very
40 feet
similar
there.
to-
I'm so sick and tired of this fallacious argument. Been practicing law and creating lots like that in the village for since the 1980s. He's pulling it out of his you-know-what. The minimum frontage in the village of Southampton for a lot, not a flag lot, is 40 feet. It's specifically
So it
been
mirrors
designed
the
to have
town.
40
The town
feet.
has the same.
Town has the,
is
Kim, I
exact
don't have to
same
tell you, the town has the exact same
Code requirement.
interpretation. And by the way, the town code and the village code are both what I refer to as McCruskey-Reuter codes. They came out of master plans in the late 70s that were developed simultaneously. Mr. McFarland will tell you this, for the town and the village at the same time, and that's where those codes come from. That's why you see an awful lot of language that's the same, and you see an awful lot of interpretation. It's a 40-foot frontage on a road shown on a subdivision map. It is decidedly not a flag lot. One big thing that's being missed here, and it's a huge point that's being missed here, okay, is that this subdivider is exempt from requiring an ag reserve parcel.
Mr. Bennett,
So-
that is not being, go ahead.
Well, no, because Mr. Bragman, by the way, he submitted this farmland versus farmstead versus farmable land area multiple times. That has nothing to do with your village code, number one. Number two, it is like every single other argument that Mr. Bragman has been making since November? No, since May. He said it again and again and again and again. That's when you close the hearing, when you realize an advocate has been saying the same damn thing over and over again. He's making seeker arguments, which, by the way, there's been a negative declaration. We're past that. He's making the same ridiculous arguments that he continues to make. A couple of them I find absolutely laughable. I can't believe he doesn't have more self-respect than to make the argument, and his co-counsel, there's a fueling station there, like it's a big Bucky's Master Pumper or something on 95. You know what's there? It's a 250-gallon diesel tank with 2 alarms on it sitting in a concrete tub to do what every farmer has always done, buy diesel in bulk so that they can fill their farm tractors with it. A fueling station. It's embarrassing, that kind of an argument as a fueling station. And then let's talk about the absolute bad faith and hypocrisy of Raymond Svider objecting to this application. His house is in the flood zone. It wasn't developed by the Fowlers. His house is in a flood zone. His wastewater system, not an IA system, is in a flood zone. He lives on approximately a 3-acre lot on a 2-lot subdivision that's a total of 5 acres. His buffer requirement on his lot is 30 feet. 30 feet. Would you like to know why? Because I wrote the buffer for that lot. We're talking about 150-foot buffers for properties, for the structural setbacks. We're talking about 125-foot vegetative setbacks. We're talking about 200 feet wastewater setbacks. They're all going to have to be IA systems. We're also doing something that I've never seen before in the village of Southampton. We're going to impose those buffers. We're going to impose those buffers as part of the subdivision approval, as opposed to waiting until they get done on a lot-by-lot basis, which is exactly what happened on the other subdivision. I know that subdivision extremely well. I got the subdivision approved, and we got the houses approved on it. So for Mr. Svider to be concerned about, lots in a flood zone, his house is in the flood zone, the entire thing. To be concerned about septic systems in the flood zone. His entire septic system is in the flood zone. And you know what? It's not a problem because the appropriate precautions have been taken about it. Just because you're in a flood zone, I would say 50% of the homes in the village of Southampton are in flood zones. Probably even a larger percentage in the estate area. You build according to Federal Emergency Management Agency construction requirements and elevation requirements. Or you don't get insurance. Or you don't get a building permit. You don't get a building permit. So this is just hogwash. It's all repetitive as well, which is why you should close this hearing. That you have heard absolutely no new information tonight after public hearing after public hearing after public hearing. The ZBA decision isn't clear. It doesn't say that that structure has to disappear. It says it can't be on a separate lot. It can't be on the same lot as a house on a subdivision. It's not the most clear. It's not the most well-written decision. But you remember, zoning laws are in derogation of people's rights under common law and are to be construed against the municipality. If the board and council and I have talked about this, if the board feels comfortable as a condition, when we do get to the preliminary approval stage to go back to the Zoning Board of Appeals and ask them to interpret it, we're more than happy to do that. I don't think that you should be in the business of interpreting a Zoning Board of Appeals application. That's hardly a model of clarity. And so that doesn't create an issue whatsoever. This is a voluntary act creating this agricultural reserve area. You would think that there was a brothel going on there based upon what Mr. Bragman and his co-counsel have said. There's absolutely no proof whatsoever. No proof whatsoever that there's anything but agricultural going on there. Do you know what Somerville does at the property? They grow privet. They grow privet. That's what they do. Where's the other proof? There's no proof. It's not up to me to prove their case that they think there's some sort of violation going on there. There's no evidence whatsoever other than the Fowler family is doing what they've done there for generation after generation after generation after generation, which is to farm and use those buildings as part of their farm operation. And by the way, there's absolutely nothing in the village code that prohibits agricultural structures as part of a farm. That might be one of the most absurd zoning arguments I've ever heard in this room. And I've been practicing in this room before the planning board, the zoning board, the trustees, and the ARB for years. There's nothing, absolutely nothing in the village code that makes no sense at all. From barns to farm stands. Do you remember there used to be a farm stand on Hill Street? Do you think that would have gone on in everyone's view for the 30 years that went on if there was a problem with having agricultural structures in residential and zones as part of an agricultural use? So, but having said all of this, again, and finally, as was recognized by your consultant, as was a very heart of this application, is that there's no buffer now between the wetlands area and the farming area, and the owner is absolutely entitled to continue to farm and fertilize and do all of the things that happens with farming right up to that wetlands area. We're talking about the imposition of the largest buffers that any municipality has out here. Or certainly as large. I don't think any municipality has a 200-foot setback for wastewater structures. The town of Southampton is 150. These are all going to be imposed as part of this subdivision. So what you're going to see is a much more beneficial environmental situation there. Nothing has been added you haven't heard. You had a rehash of all the seeker arguments, which are being touted out after your negative declaration. There's nothing new here. It's incumbent on you, I would respectfully suggest, to close this public hearing. And I would ask you to do so. This has been a rush. I was talking to Bailey when a rush. The original application was made 4 years ago. A rush. It's been back and forth and back and forth. Map changes over areas, easement areas, setbacks. There has been a very, very extensive review of this. Painstaking by the board. To suggest that you have rushed through this 7-lot, 5-lot reduced density subdivision, which was originally filed with you 4 years ago, is really absurd. So again, my respect for
When was the first public hearing?
Oh God.
Preliminary application.
No. The first public hearing of the sketch plan. What, 3 years ago? 3 years ago.
There was a meeting that I watched, I think it was earlier this year, where Mr. Fowler got up and talked about his farming operation. Do you remember which? I know I saw it, I watched it on.
I'm not trying to be argumentative, and I'm not trying to be,
so it was
there's
this
been
year.
so many public
Okay,
hearings on
I
this.
remember seeing it.
couldn't-
I've been on the board for 2 years. This was already in the
No, I remember watching
pipeline
him
when
come here, Mr. Fowler. I
I
wasn't
got here,
here,
so-
but I watched an old meeting, so that's why I was just curious.
It's
when it
definitely
started.
been working its way through the process since I've been here.
And remember, one of my big concerns throughout, and I said, this is taking an enormous amount of time for sketch plan. And every board member said, work this out with us.
Yep.
Work these things out. Take the time to do this. Take the time to do this. So hopefully our concept that we want will be something that we can all agree on.
Yeah, I would characterize it, at least when I started on the planning board, as the conversation as we're going to do it a little differently. We're going to take a lot of time on the sketch plan, get all the issues out on the table, and make sure that we've got agreement at that sketch plan stage so that we can accelerate the discussion later in the process, because we've brought everything, all the issues up early, addressed them early, and dealt with them at the sketch plan.
So you'll remember after the sketch plan, I've been dogged about this, about the access issue. And, that was one of the things that stayed open after the sketch plan. But, so now we've come to a resolve on that, a very, very, very willingness to do that. That stayed open after the sketch plan.
Yeah.
But the arrangement of the lots was a 3-year process.
Yeah.
3-year process. So to suggest that this has been rushed is absurd. And then it's been on the public hearing docket. There've been pre-seeker hearings, post-seeker hearings. You haven't heard anything new tonight. Nothing. You've heard absolutely nothing new. And that's the time to close the hearing. I'm not asking that you make a decision. I'm asking you to close the hearing. You've had
Understood.
more than enough information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Understood.
Mr. Chairman?
Just please. Yeah.
Very quickly.
You've got to step up. You've got to step up. Right. Because I would like to move on this.
I know the board took time during the sketch plan phase, but what you have to bear in mind about the sketch plan is there was no environmental review, no discussion of the pond, no discussion of the floodplain, no discussion of the drainage on the roadway. So the fact that you juggled the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle throughout a sketch plan is not evidence that you resolved all the issues. That's
Understood.
all.
Yeah, thank you.
What did happen during the sketch plan is we started with a 12-lot yield, we came in with a 10, and you asked
John, we
us to
can't
go
hear
down.
you.
If we-
Doesn't
we-
count. Doesn't count unless you're in front of the microphone.
Yeah, and to get back to to the yield idea, again, That has nothing to do with the issues that have driven this discussion and brought in the neighbors, which are largely the environmental issues, saving open farm fields, saving the
Yeah,
views,
I
et cetera.
completely understand. Thank you. Got it. Kim, any advice on leaving the hearing open or closed?
If you feel that there's new information that you would like to hear or you need to hear, that would be your prerogative. I can tell you that some time ago, I drafted a pond maintenance and access easement pursuant to the board's direction, where the parties to that agreement are the client, Mr. Bennett's client, the Village of Southampton, and the trustees of the freeholders and commonality of the town of Southampton, a non-exclusive easement of ingress and egress over proposed lot 6 of the subdivision map as shown on the map for the purpose of environmental testing and purpose of conducting environmental maintenance of Phillips Pond after proper notice to the property owner. And that also it had language in there that no party can block the access easement, they can't impede their access down to the water, that the property owner would be responsible for the maintenance of that easement, and that the village and the trustees, when they serve written notice, could get access and entry onto the property for the purpose of water quality testing. Any disturbance caused by any party to the access easement shall be restored in accordance. And that was the pond maintenance and access easement. Then I drafted a declaration of covenants and restrictions for the 125-foot non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer, 125-foot landscape setback, 150-foot building setback, 200-foot septic setback. And in that buffer area, which Mr. Bennett said correctly, which I had not seen before, but he agreed to it, was that the buffer would automatically be imposed when each lot got sold. So when the lot gets sold, the non-fertilization, non-disturbance buffer area as shown on this map would be imposed on each lot as it got sold, and within that buffer, you can't have any construction, clearing, cutting, filling, fertilization, mowing. No topsoil, loam, sand, gravel, rock, or minerals shall be deposited, excavated, or moved. No streets, roadways, or other rights-of-way for vehicle use shall be allowed except for Lot 6, because that's going to have the pond maintenance and access easement. No trees, plants, or vegetation shall be artificially transplanted into said buffer area except with the consent of the village. No liquid or sewage, waste, or other objectionable or offensive material refuse shall be permitted to be discharged into the buffer area, or shall no portion be used as a leaching field or sewage disposal system for the placement, construction, maintenance of individual shared septic systems. No dumping, placement, storage, burning of any liquid, and forever kept open in a natural state, open and free of all buildings and other structures. In addition, in the same agreement, the applicant has agreed to a landscaping buffer. Now, there was a landscape, I know one of the speakers said they didn't see it, but I did see it. I just don't know exactly where it is. There is a landscaping plan along the front of Wickapog to screen the agricultural use. I did see it. And they've agreed to do a buffer for that area that they have to maintain and water and replace dead vegetation within that area.
If I can interrupt, I know that Hannah Abrams, I have never received this. I've not received it in my inbox
But I'm not
anywhere.
asking you to
So
approve
without
it.
seeing it, reading
Right.
it, reviewing
But
it,
if they-
I,
Let me just say, if you close the public hearing, you're not issuing a decision on any of the legal documents.
Yeah.
So we can still negotiate and speak about it, because I
Not in
know
our
you would like to
files.
look at it. That's fine, but we're not deciding on that tonight.
Yeah, so.
So that's still an ongoing negotiation. Of course, if the board members want to review and comment, we can do that,
Yeah,
even after the close of the public hearing,
Yeah, the one question I
if you
have.
so desire.
Yeah, thank you. The one question I have is, if we close the public hearing, talk to me about timing of a approval or a decision on a preliminary site plan
Is it 60 days?
62 days.
62
Yeah,
days?
that's what's giving me a little indigestion as we go into the holiday season here, and we've got fewer meetings during that I start a 60-day clock ticking.
Let me make a suggestion,
when
as I
we
did on the prior application. If
Yeah.
you would like to, if it would give you more comfort to add 30 days to that, that's fine. Because you know what? We've been in this process for a long time. We don't want you to feel uncomfortable. We simply want to go forward. Having said all of that, please let me finish,
Yep.
because this is really important, because it's the culture, it's the pattern, it's the uses. I cannot remember any time in 30 some odd years of doing this, if a staff member or a lawyer called me up and said, John, I need more time for that decision, that I didn't grant it. Would you like to know why I do that? Because you know what you can do? You just deny it.
Yeah.
So,
I get that.
you know, if you would like to do that, that would be fine. I don't think you should need to take all that time, but if that gives you more comfort, I would more than happy to agree to that, because essentially now we're November, December, you've lost a month, and I get it. I understand that.
Look, I appreciate that. If we can have, and I don't think it's going to take that much time personally, so an extra 30 days would give us 90 days, or the end of February. If you agree to that, and Kim says that's fine, and everybody up here thinks that's plenty of time, down here, plenty of time, yeah.
I just don't understand why we wouldn't wait and then have another meeting and clear up any issues we have. Why don't we hear from our planner, our council, on what we've heard of today? Why don't we just do it right
Because that's
now,
not the
and
reason
then we
you
close it
open
when we're
open
satisfied?
meeting, open or closed. You're not understanding the structure. That's not why you leave a public hearing open. You take the public hearing, you use it to get input from the public.
Yeah.
Which we have,
Yeah,
but
thank
we
you.
haven't had any opinions from our experts on what was
Please,
just said tonight.
Please,
Yeah.
please.
Okay. You're good with that, right?
I am.
Kim,
Yeah.
is there, sorry,
Yeah,
is there a default approval procedure for a subdivision with regard to the 62-day period?
I know in the town of Southampton there is. I'd have to take a look at your code.
Can we look that up right now, please?
But he agreed to give 30 days like he
So
did on the
that-
site plan
so
for
that
71 Mill
preempts-
Street.
Look, if it works, right, I am comfortable making a motion to close the public hearing.
No second.
He's waived it,
You
so.
just made it. Just made it in a second.
Say that again, Kim?
He's waived any imposition of the 62-day.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. So with that being said, I'd like to make a
As part of
motion.
the motion,
As part of that motion, I'd like to move that we close the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
That covers it.
Aye, okay.
Thank you.
There's still two other matters, I think, on your agenda now.
Yeah, there are. We
Okay.
got to get to those. John, Mr. Bennett, before you go, it did come up, this landscape plan.
It's in the file.
There's a PowerPoint presentation.
No, it's in the file.
No, I
Does-
did, Lisa, was there not a landscaping plan?
There is in the Dropbox. I will look back. There was a lot of different submissions. I have to look back at when it was, because it was early in the process. I don't remember.
Does the
when.
landscape plan, the one that counts, the one that we're supposed to look at, right? Because does that look exactly like that
Yes,
PowerPoint presentation?
it does. It's a landscape plan prepared by Aries Design. And there's a presentation with renderings, but there's also a formal planting plan that was filed as part of the application. And it was early on, so it's probably like January it was filed.
Of this year, you think it was the beginning?
I'll
Yeah.
look again, because I spent the better
Yeah.
part of an hour trying to dig it up in
It was,
Dropbox.
because our application was initially filed for preliminary approval in like December, and I
Yeah.
think January
All
or so.
right, I
was
saw the
supplemented.
Aries renderings,
Okay.
right, which were fine, but I couldn't find a landscape
Yeah, the-
plan that showed the same thing. So that's important to us. All
No.
right, thank
We
you.
can file additional copies if you like, though.
Thank you.
The landscape plan you're talking about is the one for Wickapog Road?
Correct.
Well, no,
It-
what
well,
happens
does
is.
it also
No, no,
include
let me
the
finish.
buffer?
Just let me finish.
No.
When you get down towards what we all would consider the easterly end of Wickapog, it turns into Fowler. So it turns into Fowler
Can
before
you
you
talk
make
in
that.
front of the microphone?
Wickapog turns into Fowler before you make the right-hand turn, so that you're heading south to the ocean.
The renderings show a view from the western entrance of the Fowler property, all the way around the corner to the other side of the little cottage there. That's what the landscape plan shows too.
That's what they show.
Okay,
But it does not include the buffer.
it does
Okay,
not.
just-
Yeah, it stops right there at that driveway on the Fowler Street, on the east side.
It's
Yeah.
confusing, because Wickapog
Yeah.
turns into Fowler before.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
On the matter of 865 Merrick Holdings, we adjourned that until,
Yeah, sorry, that should note that it's been adjourned to
Yeah.
the December 15th meeting based on the presentation we heard from the applicant's representative.
perfect, thank you. And then I do know that you were contacted by a representative or the owner of 75.
Yes, I believe Kim was in touch with Dr.
Yeah,
Alon.
White Street.
Dr. Alam?
Alam, I believe.
Had called me,
Yeah,
and he was getting ready to do a medical mission to Ghana, but he did, we discussed it at some length. In the end, he's going to the health department to seek an exemption. He doesn't think that he's subject, so I told him, well, then you need to go apply for an exemption, but he promised that he would keep in touch with me on the status of that and keep in contact, and he's not back yet, but he asked if you could please put it over to January after the holidays.
yeah, I'm going to put it over till our meeting in February, the first one in February. Monday, February 2nd. So a motion to adjourn 74 White Street to our meeting on Monday, February 2nd. Second?
Yeah.
Thank you.
He's been there for 5 years.
Yeah, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Did you advise him, he's doing this himself, right?
Yes, I told him
Needs a little,
he needs some counsel.
thank you. Okay.
Sanitary engineer, probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good advice.
About 5 years.
Good advice.
Is that right?
The November 3rd minutes, everybody read those, or we need some more time?
I've read them.
Read?
Had a flood.
Yep, all, motion to approve the meeting minutes from November 3rd. Second? Thank you,
Second
Anna, all in
motion.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Did you want to say something, Amanda?
Yeah, I think we need to discuss the procedure of making sure that all documents are distributed to each and every one of us prior to every meeting. As Kim
I have a
acknowledged,
paper
she has
coming up
not
there with emails. I
sent
I
it
didn't
to
get
us
back
directly.
yet.
We have not received
I
them,
haven't seen it.
Which,
Paper,
not in the file, so.
If
Yes.
everybody
We
could
can't
provide
vote
me with their email address. I did send a piece of paper that way. I don't know where it went.
It went past Mark.
But it should also be
Yeah, for
distributed
the-
on our
for the
official
record, I'm not
emails.
happy with that either, but.
Well, it's unfortunate to walk in and not have received, I should say, documents that we're talking about. So that shouldn't happen again.
I am not going to promise you it doesn't happen again. I think this was a special circumstance. I appreciate the work that Alex and Lisa and Kim did to help this, 71 Hill Street meet an important meeting for them. I don't think, we've heard everything. I think the,
No, just discussing as well on the Ballard property. We
Which-
didn't see
what-
the CNRs, we didn't see the draft ag easement language, we haven't seen any of
We still
that.
have time to review
No,
that.
but that was discussed
we're
tonight,
not- we're not
and
gonna
Kim
put
said
this
she had
tonight.
already distributed it to you, and yet we didn't get it.
I didn't get it either.
So you didn't get it, we didn't get it, and we've just we've closed a public hearing on it.
No,
But listen, can I tell the board that there's a functional misunderstanding on legal documentation. I've been doing this a long time, almost 30 years. I've never had a board critique my legal documents. If you want to have some input, I'm happy to give it to you, but the way it's been done throughout my career in multiple municipalities is when the approval has the documentations that are subject to the approval of the board attorney. I've been sharing these documents with the village attorney, and we've reviewed these exhaustively. I'm happy to provide it to you, but I'm not going to be negotiating my legal documents with other attorneys that are not parties to this agreement. I'll do it with you, but not every single application that requires a legal document requires your approval. So, but this one, yes, I will, it's important to you, I understand.
That's what you get when you have 4 lawyers on the board.
And I'm just going to mention, I did find the landscape
Just-
plans in
Lisa,
March.
just one
I'm
second.
sorry, say it again?
The landscape plan
Oh,
was
it's March?
March. So so I'll be able to share it when I don't have great connection here, but I'll try to circulate that. But March of 2025 was when they submitted that
Okay.
plan.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
'Cause I
Oh, there
was
it is,
here
you're
and
right.
I've never
It's March, I'm sorry.
I've
I was
never
looking in
seen one.
January. Okay, it's in the Dropbox under 550 Wickapog for March, the date that Lisa said.
yeah, Kim, I was joking around.
Oh,
I know you
sorry.
worked very hard today, and I know you spent a lot of time back and forth with Eileen to get.
That's my job.
Yeah, so I do appreciate that work, and I thought what was done was a pretty good job from what I saw of it and heard about it over the course of the day.
March
It's not-
31st.
It's not ideal to operate this way, I agree with you, but I don't think it's an issue for the Fowler application, because we've got plenty of time to continue to talk
Yes, we
about
can
this.
continue to talk
It's a
about it.
separate issue from closing the public hearing. I don't think that we have been hearing a lot of new information on this, but I don't think we've been hearing it. I did want to leave the public hearing open this week. We didn't close last time because two board members were absent, and I wanted to give it sort of one last chance for people to talk about it if there was anything new, but there hasn't been, so I am completely comfortable
Okay.
making a motion
I
to
will,
close the meeting.
if it's okay, I will email you the proposed documents.
Yeah.
But I need the paper. Who's got it? With the email addresses.
It's down there.
I don't have it. I haven't seen it.
So,
I'll give you my address here.
If there's,
Okay.
no other business before.
Kim, I can forward those
Okay,
emails to
please,
you.
thank
if
you.
need
Just
them
for
that way.
clarification, shouldn't it go
Yeah,
as
and
well
I'll
to
just
our
make it,
official emails?
I'm
Or
sorry?
.gov emails as well as our private, to be sure that we get the documents,
How
right?
do
Because
you
you're
usually
saying you
receive
didn't.
them?
I didn't hear the question.
Variety of
The
ways.
communication should be to our official emails, the .gov, as well as if
Okay.
you want
However you
personal
want.
for belt and suspenders on the ag and
Okay, so
covenants
Alex
and
will send me the,
restrictions.
if you want to go to you all have
Do
.gov
both.
emails?
Yes,
Yes.
and we also have
Oh.
our private, and
I do
so
not, okay.
that way we won't miss it, or we won't not
All
receive
right.
it.
And just to make a distinction, that's separate from documents submitted by applicants for application, which are always available on the Dropbox and are provided in hard copy to the board members, and they're available for pickup, just as a reminder, Thursday at noon prior to a Monday meeting.
So, thank you.
Sure.
My Dropbox is so full. Every time I click on a file, it says I've got to buy more space. And getting back to where I was is nearly impossible.
Yep, so you don't need to log in to access the Dropbox. It's a public Dropbox. It's accessible to anybody from the public.
So if I don't log
You can
in-
set up your own, which is what I think Mark probably did, and put documents into his Dropbox.
Yes.
Yeah.
And therefore, his Dropbox is not as large as the village. You should look at the village Dropbox.
Yeah, use the link that's on the agenda, and it may help to log out if you're logged in. If you're logged in and trying to, it may try and sync the files, and if you don't have space, you'll
Okay,
have an
so
issue
I
syncing.
should just go to the village.
Yes,
uh,
always use the
link and
link that's
not-
on the agenda and try opening. You can open up in a new browser window, but if you try logging out, and you'll have access to everything that's posted there.
Thank you. If there's no other business, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you.
The ayes have it.